Today's guest is someone whose work is rooted in advocacy, compassion, and helping people prepare for life's most important transitions. Before we begin our conversation, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Catalina Reynoso. So Catalina was raised in Linwood and Compton and went to earn her bachelor's degree from UCLA and her law degree from Loyola Law School. She practices area and estate planning, Medi-Cal planning, conservatorships, and probate, with passion for helping families navigate complex situations with clarity and care. Her dedication to elder law, special needs planning comes from her close relationship with her grandmother and her physically disabled aunt. Experiences that deeply shaped the work she does today. Beyond her career, Catalina is a wife, a mother to a brilliant toddler, fluent Spanish speaker, outdoor enthusiast, and is currently in the final stages of growing her family through adoption. Thank you so much, Catalina, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Did I miss anything in your introduction?
No, I think you covered it.
Let's start off with what inspired you to pursue law?
So I actually wanted to be a social worker when I was in undergrad, and I was going down that path, and my uncle just sat down and chatted with me, and he said, I know you really want to help people, but when you're a social worker, you're helping people find the resources that they need. If you become an attorney, you can be the actual resource. And that really struck me. Like, you're right. If I become a social worker, I'm helping you navigate really difficult things by getting you help. But if I become an attorney, I can be the actual help. And so that just changed my trajectory. Thank God it was still early enough for me to start that path while I was at UCLA. So then I became a pre-law student and started taking all of the courses that I needed to go down that route.
And how did you choose estate planning, or was that where you wanted to go?
No. So when I first started, I thought I would be an immigration attorney because I've always wanted to help my community, and probably because that was one of the only examples that I had seen of Latino Spanish speakers really going out there and advocating for the community, which I still admire, honestly. I was on that path for a year and a half while I was in law school. I went in thinking I was going to be an immigration attorney to help victims of crime, asylum seekers, children without guardians that come into the country and are trying to be matched up with a guardian here, whether it be a relative. So I did that work for about a year and a half. And then I realized I'm a huge empath, and all of the work that I was doing was just making me, in a way, feel like my light was being taken away, because I felt so strongly for each of these children and victims of crime, and I couldn't go home and turn it off. And that's why I say I still really admire people who do that work. But I needed to find an area of law where I could still use my empathy to help individuals, but not take so much of the trauma home with me. And so that's why I started looking in what other areas of the law could a Spanish speaker really help the community. And I took an internship with Rosa Fregoso, who's now a judge, and she was working at an estate planning firm at the time, and I went to work there, and I love the work, explaining estate planning to 70-year-old immigrants still who came to this country and built their fortune from the floor up, and they still only speak Spanish, and they're looking for legal services for someone who could help them in their language. So when I realized, oh my goodness, there are so few attorneys in this area of the law, I thought this really could be something that I do. And then what pushed me even further to be convinced that that was the area for me was that I saw my own family members in the clients, right? I was partially raised by my grandmothers and my physically disabled aunt. And I think because of that, I have this deep respect for individuals who are elderly and for individuals with disabilities, and that I view individuals as a whole person. And if you have a disability, that doesn't define you, because I was raised by a very brilliant person who happens to have a disability. And so that made it so that I knew this is the community I want to work with. You know, I want to work with not just Spanish speaking elderly clients, but if I could be a resource for them, that'd be great. I do have a mixed group of clients, but I will say that los abuelitos and abuelitas are my favorite clients. And anytime that someone comes in and they have a disability, they're trying to preserve their benefits, same thing, like that's very personal for me, because my grandmother was on Medi-Cal, my aunt is still on Medi-Cal, and me as a college student trying to figure out how to navigate those systems for them, not even knowing this was an area of law that someone could help with, right? Thinking, I'll just Google it until I figure it out. Those were the early stages of me, I think the seed being planted in me that this would be my future passion.
And I know you focus a lot on helping your elder clients with Medi-Cal as well. And I know there's a term that a lot of people will hear and they don't know. What is elder law?
Elder law is, I call it estate planning plus. So when you go to an estate planning attorney, they will help you, just like I am also an estate planning attorney, with a trust, a will, a power of attorney, an advanced healthcare directive. Elder law starts looking at what issues are going to come down the road and helping you prepare to avoid big problems, so you're not crisis planning if all of a sudden you have a medical emergency or a shortfall in health coverage. We want to start thinking about, where are you right now? Do you need to start looking into hiring a care manager? Do you need a power of attorney by tomorrow? Because I can already tell that your health is declining quickly, so you can't wait months and months for these documents to be done. So it's really just being conscious of our aging clients and looking for what's the next step for them, because I plan differently for a young couple that's working with young children than I do for an older client who might already be a widow or widower, who's trying to live at home for as long as possible and maybe needs to start making their house more accessible for disabilities, and also looking at what their family unit and who their support system is. Because if I have an elderly client, like I had one here this morning, who doesn't have any family member that she can rely on, but she has some assets, not a ton. So I might talk to her about, hey, maybe you should meet with a care manager. Do you have any long-term care insurance in place? If not, let's look at your assets to see whether you would benefit from getting on Medi-Cal in case, for example, you ever need skilled nursing or to live in an assisted living facility. Perhaps Medi-Cal can help cover that gap for that client. And so knowing about public benefits is part of elder law. Doing conservatorships to help family members have the tools to care for their elderly individual or disabled individual. I should say for their family member with a disability. That's all part of elder law, is really trying to look into the future a bit and preparing for some of life's circumstances now.
And that's a good way of putting it, because yes, if you start planning earlier on, it's easier. But once you get older and your mental capacity starts declining, it's harder to create these documents, right?
100%. Like, I think one of the biggest mistakes that people do when caring for their elderly parents is waiting too long to get their power of the parents, have them get their power of attorney in place, their advanced healthcare directive, their trust, because you get that diagnosis of, oh, you're in the early onset Alzheimer's. That should be a giant bell. Like, your family members should meet with an estate planning attorney or elder law attorney as soon as possible. Because I've seen people who think they have time because they have that early diagnosis, and just a year later, their family members like unrecognizable. Like they just decline so quickly. And now where they could have had a $500 power of attorney, they're starting a $15,000 conservatorship. So it is that critical to really act before it's too late.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, like you said, they always think we have more time.
Right.
And that's a misconception that we all have, especially I think we learned that during COVID, or like you said, right now, it's like a 1 year difference, right?
Right.
So what other myths do you hear about like at least from the community about estate planning?
I hear so many, and so I have a presentation that I do for free if anyone's interested in me presenting for a group, and one of the slides is actually myths. And so I say everything on this page is not true. I don't want you to think anything on this page is true, but I think the funniest one in the Latino community is, if I prepare for death, then I will die. Like, la muerte va a venir por mí, right? And so I say, okay, so if you just don't get any of these documents done, then you're going to be eternal. You're never going to die, right? Because the opposite has to be true. And they say, no, it doesn't work that way. And I just laugh because I say, I think it's funny that you think you know how it works, right? Because none of us know how it works. None of us know cuándo la muerte va a venir or why, right? And so the myth of waiting too long isn't just for people who are retiring. Like, the moment anyone turns 18, that's when their parents can no longer make decisions for them. And so the question becomes, if you can no longer make decisions for yourself because of an accident, injury, anything, right? Something happens, you're in the hospital, or whatever other reason, you're incapacitated and now you can't make decisions. Who do you want to make decisions for you? And so 18 is really young. I think that the biggest myth about estate planning, the biggest myth is that you are preparing to die. Like, you're getting everything in order to die. And no, estate planning isn't getting everything in order to die. It's also preparing for incapacity. What does incapacity mean? It's like where you can no longer make your decisions, and that might be temporary. Like, I'm not thinking Alzheimer's or dementia. Yes, that happens, and these documents help you prepare for that. But like, you're on vacation and something happens, right? And now
freak accidents.
Yes, freak accidents. Or not even, like, you're just outside of the country and you need someone from inside of the country to manage your assets. And we're hearing that a lot with people who are considering, unfortunately, like, self-deporting, right? Because of all of the immigration news. And so I say, you don't want to leave the country until you have a power of attorney where you designate someone in the country to be able to manage your assets for you, right? So that's one example where I could say, these documents aren't always to prepare for death. Like, you could prepare to be outside of the country and someone make decisions inside the country. Or like, if you're in the hospital and you can't go to the bank, if you have a power of attorney, that person can go to the bank for you. So that's the biggest misconception, I think, and also why people dread it, because they're like, I'm going to go to this office and talk to this attorney. Or I'm going to talk about these like really sad topics that make people uncomfortable. And it's not all like that. Like, you'd be surprised. Sometimes I sit down with my client and we get so sidetracked, right? Just talking about their story, because it helps me be informed about this person's values. And so I can make sure that those values make themselves into their case, right? Into their documents. And also like who I can trust as their attorney, because I can't talk to a lot of people. I can only talk to my client. But if my client says, can my daughter pick up my documents? Okay, what's your daughter's name so I can ask for her ID, right? And so it is helpful. And I think I'm biased because it's my profession. But most of the people who come in, I think, are shocked at the end of it. Like, this isn't how I expected it to be, because they thought we were just going to focus on, okay, when you die, who's going to get what? And it's not like that. We talk about, if you leave the country, who can go to the bank for you? Who can collect your rent? Who can pay your mortgage?
I think it's your way of being. And like when you mentioned that you were an empath, I think it's a way for you to communicate with your clients, because if you yourself, if you're like being a little frantic with them, or like if you're the way you are with them, but if you're speaking to them calmly and just talking to them, it makes them feel more comfortable and be aware of where they're going with you.
Thank you.
So like you said, so what is at what point realistically should someone start planning?
I think if you're going to college, you don't need a full estate plan. But if your child's going to college, they should have a power of attorney and advanced healthcare directive, right? Where they choose whether it's their parent, their sibling, whoever. But at that point, they should have at least those documents. So I will say everyone, as soon as they're 18, should have a power of attorney or advanced healthcare directive. But then once you have any assets, that's a great time to now have a trust, okay? Because with a trust, you have more control over choosing who's going to inherit from you and how they're going to inherit. It has more flexibility than a will. So I would say if you just purchased a home, 100%, you need to meet with an estate planning attorney because you need a living trust to protect your home in various situations, not just when you pass away.
Perfect. And that's something that I always do tell my clients, you know, buy your house, like, let's put it in a trust. And what happens if you don't have a trust?
Well, there's two different situations. If you don't have a trust and you become incapacitated and don't have a power of attorney, so no trust, no power of attorney, and now you had some kind of health emergency, your family might still end up in court while you're alive with a conservatorship. An example I can give you is someone needs care, but all of their life savings are in their home. So the family wants to refinance to get some money out. Mm-hmm. The home is paid off, right? They don't want to sell the home, but they do need to access the equity. Well, the person who's on title now is incapacitated and can't sign anything. A trust would have designated who could sign for that individual. A power of attorney would have done the same thing, right? So that's in the case where an emergency happens and the homeowner can't sign. And this happens even between spouses. Most people don't know that if you're on title together with your spouse and your spouse now has Alzheimer's or any other condition, a stroke, you can't act alone without a power of attorney. And so most people are shocked. Like, what do you mean? So if my spouse isn't okay, now I can't sell my house? 100% until you go get a conservatorship. Unless you had a trust and a power of attorney. That would have helped. Now, let's talk about, once you pass away, the difference between having a trust and not having a trust is huge. Just looking at it from like the Medi-Cal perspective. Many people are afraid of the Medi-Cal bill, the Medi-Cal bill. Well, that does exist in very limited situations. Not everyone who gets Medi-Cal has a Medi-Cal bill. But even in those limited situations, if you have a trust, there's no way that the state of California can charge you for the Medi-Cal that you received in California. That's why I said the state of California. If you're outside of California and you have a trust, that may not be the rule, but that's been the rule in California since January 1st, 2017. So now it's like, okay, Medi-Cal won't be able to touch your home. And two, when that house goes through court, if you don't have a trust, the house will have to go to court, right? If you don't have a trust, the house has to go to court. I keep saying this because many people think, I have a will.
Yes, and
No.
that's what we often hear.
Yeah.
It's like, but I have a will. I don't need a trust. But can you please explain to us, if you have a
Yes.
will, you still have to go through probate?
Yes, if you have a will, that will has to go to a judge so that the judge can, in essence, bring it to life with a court order. And so that's why I always say the only way to avoid probate when you are a homeowner is to have a living trust, right? Because once all the owners of that property have died, it'll have to go through court. So the difference in fees, for example, is that when a home goes through probate, and it's not just a home, any assets that aren't in a trust or don't have pay on death beneficiaries, like retirement accounts, if you didn't put a pay on death beneficiary, anything that ends up in court, the way we probate attorneys get paid is similar to how realtors get paid, in that we get a percentage of whatever goes through probate court. So the more assets you have, the more your home is worth, the more the attorneys get paid, and also the more you lose, right? And so having a trust is a great way to ensure that you save that home for your family members, because now your trustee, whoever you choose, works directly with an attorney outside of court and thereby saves at least $15,000, at least. And it could be $30,000 or more.
And with you, like you said, you guys get a percentage of what the estate is worth if you're the probate attorney, but people don't understand that also the administrator or executor, like whoever files the paperwork to administer the estate, also gets paid the same amount as the attorney does?
This creates big problems within a family, because whatever fee I get, let's say my fee is $20,000, the person who hired me to get the home through probate court gets that same fee. So I do all the work, they're providing the information, and at the end, the family's outraged because they didn't know this was going to happen. And so now 20,000 to me and 20,000 to whatever family member hired me to start this process and get them appointed. And with a trust, you can choose how much your trustee is paid. It's not just a big percentage.
Oh, so see, there's more flexibility, and then there's more money for your beneficiaries or your whoever you're going to leave the money to later on at the end. Wow, that is like perfect.
Honestly, I will say that when a home has to go through probate, there's a way bigger chance that that home will be sold to pay for the probate fees. When there's a trust for the home, usually the fees are significantly less, so the family can keep the home. And if they have to pay the fees out of pocket, they usually can afford to because it's so much less.
Oh, and that's one, I mean, that's a great point. So just make sure you guys plan for the future, right?
Right.
Another thing is, what should we know about protecting our assets while we're still planning for long-term care?
Yes. Well, when you mean protecting your assets, like having a trust so that there's no Medi-Cal recovery, that's where my mind goes. Because one of the misconceptions is that a trust in a way becomes a shield for creditors. And that is not true. For Medi-Cal, yes. But for creditors, when you create a trust, the home is still yours for the rest of your life. And so if you have creditors, they can still reach into your trust, right? There is a different type of trust called an irrevocable trust where you essentially gift away your property during life. I don't recommend that. I've seen it go south really quickly where parents gift the home to a child. They still live in the home, but they don't want it to be in their name because creditors are coming or something. And then what does the child do? Refinance, buys a new car. I mean, they take out their down payment on their own home from the parents' equity. I've seen a lot of bad things happen. Now, with that being said, in terms of planning for long-term care, there are certain situations where I recommend to clients who have rental properties, and because of that rental property, they don't qualify for long-term care Medi-Cal. In those situations, it's case by case. I say you might want to gift this property now to whoever's going to inherit it so that we can take it out of what's countable for Medi-Cal, right? And I'm, like I said, I'm looking at how soon they're going to need the care.
Yes.
Because if it looks like they're going to need the care in 2 to 3 years, let's actually do it now, because for Medi-Cal planning, you can't do it the month you need the care. You need to do it ahead of time.
Okay. Like how much ahead of time?
Well, it just depends on how many assets you have. So I would say definitely when you're meeting with an estate planning attorney, if you're getting to an age or health condition where you might need help, that's something to start planning for.
Okay. So how has helping families going through like vulnerable moments, how has that changed your perspective of life?
This is going to be really personal, but I get this personal with my clients, so I'll share it. So on my 28th birthday, my cousin, who was raised as my older brother, passed away in a drunk driving accident where the drunk driver killed my cousin and his 6-month-old son and his 7-year-old daughter. And thankfully my 10-year-old nephew survived and my cousin's wife survived. But having gone through that makes it so that when I'm helping individuals who are also in grief and crisis, I know exactly what that feels like, right? And so for me, I'm not rushing past their feelings. I tell people when they come in, because I often get them in my office like a week or two after someone died, and they're like, what do I need to do? And I can tell that they're in this mode of do, because that's easier than grieving. It's easier than letting it seep in and feeling. And so a big part of my job is saying there is time for that. Like, there is time for everything you need to do. Obviously, I say contact the Social Security Administration and let them know that your loved one has passed away. Contact their employer or retirement benefits. Like, yes, that stuff needs to get done. But really, this isn't like planning a funeral where you have to do it the moment that they die. You're better off taking time to grieve and then starting this, because I don't want my clients to use this as something else to put on their plate to avoid grieving. So the answer to your question is, by having gone through something like that myself, I feel like I can connect to my clients when they are in their most vulnerable stage, right? When they're grieving, when they feel like, how am I ever going to go back to work, right? How is life ever going to be normal again? And so I say it will be different, but it will get better. I'm not going to say I've been there, and grieving takes a long time, but at least I can share with them that I know part of what you're feeling. And so that's changed my life tremendously. Just knowing that I can connect with my clients and be of service to them and say, in my office, you don't have to fake a smile. If you need to cry, I have tissue right where the clients sit. Go ahead. So yeah, in my office, you can come in with the feelings that you're actually having. It's not my job to cheer you up and lie to you and make you feel like everything's going to be okay, right? Because no, your life is completely changed. But it is my job to figure out what steps you can take to move forward, whether it's with your house, right? Or your health insurance, if you lost your health insurance when your spouse died, those kind of things. So yeah.
And I think what you just said is very powerful, because you're letting them sit in their feelings, allowing them to grieve. And yeah, the process is going to take a long time, but
Right.
just you having that connection with them and knowing like I was there, I think it makes your clients feel more comfortable, and that way they don't feel rushed into making such a major decision.
Right.
Because there's going to be, I mean, this is months, it's a month's process. There's no time for them to
Right.
take, to take their time and grieve.
I have had clients that I've had to say, we actually cannot continue with this meeting, because I can tell how much you're grieving right now, and when you're grieving, you can't think clearly. So I'm not going to charge you for this meeting, right? I'm just letting you know these are the steps you're going to have to take, but for now, I really would like you to get to a place where you can think a little bit more clearly, because you're going to make big decisions, and I don't want you to make huge decisions when you're still really deep in your grief.
And that makes sense. And I appreciate you sharing that like very personal story with us, right? And I know you're such an open book, and earlier you had mentioned that you're going through an adoption process. So how has that season impacted your family, and like how has it impacted you emotionally?
Yeah, so I've always known I wanted to adopt, and I actually think this is the last thing on like my childhood list of things I would do when I grew up, right? Like some people are like, I'm gonna get married and do this or that. Honestly, my list was like, I'm gonna go to college, right? And I'm gonna adopt. I don't know why that was on there, but for me, it's impacted me in being grateful to my clients and my profession and my business, because I am at a place in life now where I work for myself, so I can honestly choose my schedule and my priorities around the life that I want to live. And I think if I was in a different profession, or if I worked for someone else, perhaps their values would be different, and they wouldn't see the value of me leaving at 2:30 to pick up my son, right? And I know parents are struggling with this, but this adoption journey now, for me, I am still not done with the adoption. We're waiting to be matched with a baby, but I can get a call any day, like there's a baby at the hospital, come meet the birth mother, she's looking to put her baby up for adoption. And so it's forced me to surrender this feeling of wanting to control things, because I can't. Like when you're pregnant,
Trust the process.
you know at least around when the baby might arrive. And with adoption, you complete all the paperwork, all the background screenings, everything you have to do, and then you just sit and wait. And like even planning a vacation, right? We're like, oh, okay, we'd like to go Hawaii in this month, and then it's like, let's get the trip insurance,
Right,
because we might have a baby like that week. So it has really forced me to be okay with the unknown of what my life is going to be at any moment. Like I could just have one child tomorrow, or I could have two.
And what agency are you working with right now?
I'm working with Holy Family Services. They are a nonprofit, and they mostly take hospital surrender babies. So it's like birth mothers who don't have a plan, and often they wait until they get to the hospital to see when they have their baby, if they change their mind and all of a sudden decide to keep the baby. And then if they don't, if they decide I can't do this, I can't raise this baby, then they have the option of working with an agency like Holy Family Services to choose birth parents. So that's the nice thing, is that you get to choose. So yes, if there's anyone out there who knows someone who's struggling and on the fence about putting their child up for adoption or keeping their baby, that's the reason why I went with Holy Family Services. They're no longer religious, but when they started off, they were. So they're open to families that are, gay, lesbian, single parents. They're fully accepting. You don't have to be religious to work with them. But I do recommend them because they provide therapy for the birth moms for as long as they need afterwards. So yeah, it's a great agency. I did my research and had to choose between 6 different agencies, and I decided this one feels right.
Okay, perfect. So what I'm hearing you say is you're going through all this. You have your career, you have your business, you're going through your adoption process, and it seems like you seem to have it balanced.
No, let's not lie to the audience.
How do you find that balance, or
I think definition? Any working mom or working parent really knows that balance is a myth they try to sell us, right? And so that when you feel unbalanced, you feel like you're failing. And so we need to change that rhetoric. It's not a balance, it's a freaking juggle, right? You have all these things that you're trying to juggle, and what happens to jugglers? The more they add, they're gonna drop a ball. Yeah. And so I don't know who said this quote, but I really liked it. It said, when you are in that really busy stage of your life, it's like you're juggling and you just have to decide which balls are glass, because those are the balls that you can't drop. You're gonna drop some balls once in a while because there's a ton on your plate, but you decide what is the most valuable thing of this part of my life right now.
I love that.
And so yeah, there's all these other balls, like the dishes. For me, sometimes that's a ball I drop because it's I can do this in the morning. I'm sorry, I'm too tired. I need to finish this casework by tomorrow, right? What's one ball that I don't want to drop? I don't want to be absent in my child's life. That's why I started my business, and my future child's life when I have 2, right? So to anyone out there who feels like they're not balancing, I'm not balancing everything all the time either. Sometimes you're right now is the time for me to focus on my mental health or my physical health, and you really get going on that. But that makes it so you might have less time for some of your friendships, right? And so motherhood also has forced me to just prioritize, right? I used to think I didn't have time, and then I became a mom, and I was like, I used to have so much time.
You realize.
What was I doing with all my time? So yeah, no, I'm not balancing everything, but I feel like I'm juggling pretty well, and okay, that ball I can drop today. I can drop that ball because I need to really keep these afloat. Yeah.
That's perfect. So since you're juggling, what does success mean to you?
Success means that I'm living a life where I truly am making time for what I value, because you could say that you really value something, but what shows if you truly value it is if you're making time for it, right? And when there is that disconnect between what you value, it might just be because you are at work so much and you have to pay the bills, and you value paying your bills and keeping a roof over your head, right? So that value is taking up all your time. For me, success is being able to live a life where I'm pouring into all the different values that I have. I value spending time with my family, including my aunt, who has a physical disability, right? So she lives 5 minutes from here. So those type of things. So having time for the things that I enjoy, whether it's camping, right? Or just having a quick getaway to Santa Barbara, San Diego, and then also being a person that others can depend on. I truly value that my clients feel like I had someone show up today. They just popped in because they were on the 4th floor for a doctor's appointment, and she came in and gave me a big hug. So yeah, being dependable and having time for the things that I value.
Perfect. So where can people connect with you?
So I have a website, reynosolaw.net, and if you go on there, if we have any upcoming events, you can register. We have too, but they're not on the website yet because we're still getting the dates down. You can register on there. You can also send me an email through the website. So reynosolaw.net, I think, is the best place.
Perfect. Thank you. One last thing.
Yes.
What is your favorite thing to do here in Southern California?
My favorite thing to do in Southern California is just be outside. Why wouldn't you? Like, the weather's so nice. I can't say one specific thing, like whether it's hiking or going to the park or going to the lake or the beach. Like, I just think if the weather here, we're paying for the weather tax, right? The sunshine tax. I better go get my sunshine tax back.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Catalina, for joining us today. As you can see, connect with her, and you gave us everything from like adoption to like trust and estate planning to like even real estate related questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was enjoyable. It went by so fast. This was great. Yeah.